Hopefully that'll go live. Okay, looks like we're live. So we've only got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people in at the moment. So I might just wait a little while, get 1 or 2 more, although I suppose 5 is a quorum out of 10, if you go with 50%.
I see what you did there.
Sorry, what's that?
I said I see what you did there with the 50%.
Yeah. And now we've got 6, so that might do. Okay, so let's start. So thank you for putting in your use case diagrams. One thing I want to do today is talk a bit about the proposal a bit more and show you an example of a past proposal that is okay. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good, to show you what I want you to put together. And it's going to take a few weeks to get the proposal done, but I want to try and get you to put together a first draft for next week, so we can then review everybody's drafts and think about how to present it. The aim is, given that we have the I've got the wrong date there on for week 11. Given that we have the Good Friday break coming up on April 2nd, the aim is on the week after that, so that'll be April 9th. The aim is that we will you will present your proposals. But first of all, we've got to write. I think we've got to write down what the proposals are and figure out exactly what we're trying to build, so that after we've presented those proposals on the 9th, then we know, okay, we can change gears and move into the design phase of the project. At the moment, we're still pretty much in the ideation phase. Last week we did the down select, and we now have 3 projects going forward. And the aim, you're not all going to have the same idea about what the project is, but we need to come to an agreement within each team what the aim of the project is. And yeah, we'll see what happens. And the first step of getting that agreement is to put together a proposal that you can all stand behind. Okay, so that's where we are. Like I said, the 2 deliverables that you have on your plate next are the written proposal and then the proposal presentation. I'm not a big fan of presenting Word documents. Word documents are meant to be read offline. The proposal presentation should show what's in the proposal document that we're going to talk about later today. We have been talking about, but it shouldn't. You shouldn't just show the Word document on the screen and talk your way through it. You're better off using something like PowerPoint, or I think there's a nice website called beautiful.ai that makes really nice presentations and simple transitions and things. Because when you're talking, even though I've always got a PowerPoint behind me, right? When you're talking, the talk is the thing. To paraphrase Shakespeare, right? The play's the thing. In this instance, the talk is the thing. It doesn't matter what's up there. What matters is what I'm saying, and hopefully what's up there is supporting what I'm saying, but it's only supporting, it's not what I'm saying. There's a law professor, and Lawrence Lessig, that's his name. I'd forgotten his first name. And he has this thing about presentations, and he doesn't present a slide like this. Like if he had a slide like this on his presentation, it would be there for about a second, because his presentations, at least the style he is known for, he has a slide about every second, and there's nothing on each slide. There's maybe a word or some letters, and his presentation, the actual PowerPoint or whatever he uses, is more of an animation than a slide deck, and his voiceover is the narration, and that's a really interesting way to do stuff. I don't have time to put into that. He's a well-known law professor, and he has some very specific things that he talks about. So that's a good way for him to operate. Plus, it's a really effective communication tool. Okay, so that's where we are with that, and I've been putting this up. So at the moment, so far, we should have a pretty clear idea of what you're trying to achieve. Maybe still need a little bit of work on the requirements, maybe, depending on how your discussions went over the last week. And the thing we haven't really talked about that I need to talk about today is architecture. These two things, and I'm not sure it's the right thing to do, but I'm asking some of the requirements to be put together in a use case diagram, and I'm going to review each team's use case diagrams shortly. And this is a UML diagram, Unified Modeling Language, that people use in software and in systems engineering. I'm going to ask you to try and use another UML diagram to describe your architecture, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a bit. And that's to use a deployment diagram. And what the deployment diagram does is it describes the system, the physical system architecture. It tells the viewer what computers are involved. Do you have a mobile phone? Do you have a desktop computer? Do you need a server in the cloud? It tells the viewer what network configuration you're using. Do you need to have a Wi-Fi network? Do you need to have an RJ45, Cat5, Cat6 network? Do you need to have a switch? Do you need to have routers? All of that information should be captured in a deployment diagram, but only the stuff you need for your project. The other thing a deployment diagram has is it will show you what pieces of software you need to reside on all of the hardware, right? So it'll tell you if there's off-the-shelf software that you need. It'll tell you what off-the-shelf software is required. Maybe you need a database. Maybe you need a web server. Maybe you need a Bluetooth controller software, right? It'll also tell you if there's software that you need to write that is part of the project, right? So I've found it's it's a pretty simple diagram. Even the use case diagram is pretty simple, but the deployment diagram also is relatively simple. But the aim is to, again, start thinking in a little bit more concrete terms about what you need to do in order to achieve your project. And we're still there. If we get the project proposal right, then the project concept review, the presentation of the project proposal, should be pretty straightforward. There's difference in format in the presentation. Obviously, there's it's going to be on Discord, and you're going to have to present it as a team. I like all members of the team to talk at some point during each presentation. Hopefully reasonably evenly distributed across the team members. But that's another thing that helps you figure out how to work as a team. Okay, any comments or questions so far? Okay. So there are our project ideas, and one thing I do want all of you to do is come up with a better name. I have just written down very prosaic and banal names, right? So I would suggest coming up with a better name. Examples of better names from last cohort were the Bear Aware Alarm, which not only describes precisely what it does, I think it's a pretty nice name. There was one called Coffee King, and while that doesn't describe exactly what it does, it gives you the right ballpark to start thinking about. It's obviously about coffee. And another one was Aquadrone. Okay, so I think there's some potentially better names available. I will tell you that I shared this list of projects on my Facebook page, and the one piece that the one project that drew a lot of attention was the fridge automation one. Right, so there's a lot of interest in potentially doing that. A lot of it was a little skeptical too, and a friend of mine who's currently working in Switzerland. He's now a professor there. He used to work in industry, but he's a professor there now. He actually said that a group at his university did something along those lines. And I've asked him to try and send me any references he has about it, because that was it'd be interesting just to see what their outcomes were. Oops, why did it do that? Okay, so I've talked about this before. I'm not going to talk about it. Well, maybe I will talk about it a little bit more, because there's some more detail behind this that I need to talk about. There's two pieces. There's within each of these categories, there's more stuff. And then I've just put together a quick sub-rubric about the project description. Okay? And let me see what the best way to do that is. Yeah, let's well, before we do that, let's here's an example project proposal, right? This is from last year, and I believe this is the Coffee King proposal, right? And it's got all of the pieces that you need to have, right? It's not particularly long. It does have the functional and non-functional or cross-functional requirements. It does have a use case diagram. It has the organizational information. It has feasibility. It's got a budget. It's got a schedule. And it's got a conclusion, and then references also. Okay, this is available in OneNote. If you want, I can make it available in Blackboard as well, just so that you can see the sort of thing that people did. Yeah, so one thing I do want to try and get to, and the reason this might take a little bit of time, is I do want you to start thinking about what you need to do between now and December in terms of a weekly timescale. It's weekly just during semester, so even though there's some stuff happening in this project schedule over the summer, not much of it happened. Some of it did, but not much of it happened. I would recommend that it's okay for you to work on the project over the summer, but I would recommend you don't include that in your planning, just because, like I said, I've seen lots of good intentions fade away over the summer when work or play or the weather gets involved, right? Yeah, so that's a pretty decent proposal. And as I said, this is the Coffee King proposal. So the other thing you should have a look at is also here, and I think I added it to this is a more detailed checklist, if you like, of the sorts of things that you should look for in the different sections of your project proposal. Right, the abstract should be of a reasonable length. It should summarize well, and it should capture the things that it says there, the relevance, the objectives, and how you're going to address the objectives, but in a half a page to maximum 1 page. Right, and then a statement of need. You should clearly define what the problem you're trying to solve is. Back up what you're trying to do with some statistics. Describe how your solution differs from other things that are maybe already on the market, and maintain a hopeful tone, right? You've got we're not doing it this way, but oftentimes within a company, the project proposal is something that decides whether the project gets done or not. We've sort of already made that decision. We're not in a company. We have we can't do all of the projects that you had ideas for, but now that we've down selected, we can move forward with these three. But being positive about what you're trying to achieve is worthwhile. Project definition. So objectives, methods of addressing the objectives, and evaluation methods on the objectives, right? So you have to start getting down to brass tacks a little bit there. I have a little bit more detail than that that I've put. So there's a new assignment called the project proposal, and there are two rubrics. The main one I'm going to be using is the project proposal, which was on the slide that we had before. And then the other one is, let me just make that go, is this one. Let me make it a bit bigger so it's easier to read on the video. Right, so there's got to be shall statements about what your project shall do and how well it shall do it. I want to see a use case diagram. I want to see an architecture diagram. I need to talk to you about architecture diagrams. I'm not sure I'll be able to do it this week. I should have time, but I will definitely talk to you about it next week. And then one thing that I missed out last time, and I probably shouldn't have, I included it the first time I did 497, and that's a power budget, right? I want you to think about how much power each of the pieces in your architecture diagram is going to consume. Perhaps your architecture diagram includes a battery pack, right? Perhaps it includes connection to mains power. In either case, you need to have some idea of how much power it's going to consume, particularly if it's mobile and you have have to use a battery of some description. Then you need to not only do you need to talk about the power budget, you need to understand how long your device needs to run on battery, and that'll tell you something about what your power budget needs to be. Okay. Organizational information. If there's relevant feedback, relevant background information with each team member, say what it is, and then you need to identify each team member's role, right? The Coffee King team did that just in a table like that, right? And it's not that everybody does everything. That'd be wonderful, but if that happened, if you start off with that usually means that somebody forgets something. Whereas if you have slightly more delineated responsibilities, then it tends to work a little better, right? And here's the stuff that they decided. The project lead, it alternated between Chris and David. David was the person who generated the idea, so he led it initially, and then I think Chris took over as they were grinding things out. Coding, 3D printing, they needed to make some mechanical parts, and they felt the best way to do that was by 3D printing them. In order to 3D print, you actually need to design stuff in CAD software, so they had to sort of work together with that. And then it's always a good idea when you're submitting teamwork in Blackboard to know who is supposed to be submitting which assignment, right? So identifying the lead and backup submitters is a worthwhile thing to do. And let's go back there. Yeah. So then the budget, nicely formatted, total included, separated from other items, and sufficient detail. Normally the easiest way to get costs is to get them from websites, often Amazon, but sometimes Home Depot or Lowe's or DigiKey, depending on what you're trying to buy. So make sure you include links to the relevant items in your budget, or at least reference them in your budget, and that way it's clear, you can validate the costs. Don't forget tax, shipping, and delivery time. When I was a newly minted engineer, that was one thing that always caught me out. The suppliers would say, yes, we have it for that price. Well, actually, they'd say, yes, that's the price. But they wouldn't tell me that, well, actually, we can't deliver it until 6 weeks after you order it. Right? So you've got to ask for price and delivery, or price and availability. I actually ordered some, last fall I taught CET496, and because we were doing it remotely, I wanted some boards that were cheaper than the boards we have in the lab, so I could just give them out, and I wouldn't feel too bad about losing them potentially. And so I bought one, and it took quite a while to get here. I think it was from China. It took 6 weeks, and it was really good. It was $32, and it did everything I wanted. And so I got the department to buy 12 of them. But it came from the same factory, but they couldn't. They didn't want to order it directly from the factory like I had. They ordered it through Amazon, and it was twice the price through Amazon. And it came faster too, so that was okay. But it was the same board. Okay, where are we? Any questions so far? I've been talking a lot.
Just a little curious if you've taken a look at any of the case diagrams yet.
I have, and I'm going to talk about them. I've put them in this presentation. So why don't we do that? Okay, I've already talked about all this stuff. So okay, so this is the generic thing, right? And the 4 pieces are the actors, the functions, the system boundary, and then the connections between them, or the what do you call it? Interfaces between the actors and the use cases. So I thought I'd go through and critique everybody's use case. I don't know whether I've got the most up-to-date ones, but I have put them in here, right? So this is the home security system, and I'm starting on the left, and the security system owner, that sounds like a good actor, and their main connection with the home security system is control home security, and that seems pretty good to me. I then look down at one of the sub use cases, and I didn't tell you this, so no problem. This is actually a good way to do stuff. It's just the what do you call it? The formal way to do it is this connection between a major use case and a smaller use case like contact authorities is often drawn with a dashed line, and actually this is one case where you do use an arrow, and then because contact authorities might be used in lots of other places, you just call this relationship an includes relationship. But what you've got is fine. If I were teaching a software engineering methods course, it wouldn't be fine. But what you have is fine. Okay, I'm just saying once you scratch the surface, there's more stuff to do. The thing I'm worried about though with the contact authorities is it's telling me that there's a missing actor, right? There needs to be an actor for authorities, right? And they need to talk to that use case, right? That's one thing that is telling me. Okay, let's move around. Create account, that's something the security owner will want to do, and it's okay. Again, it would probably be an include relationship with control home security, but that's okay. The send notification to home and voice alert, I think that's okay. Again, these would be normally you'd have them as includes, and because the security system owner is the person who is getting the notification or the voice alert, they're already connected to the main use case, the control home security, so you don't need to draw an interface there. Okay. I'm trying to think about the protect home use case, and I'm not quite sure what the right thing to do is. I still think it's telling me that there's another actor that's missing, right? So I think we need another actor that's the home, the thing that's going to be protected, right? I think that's what we need, because the reason I say that is there's deploying sensors, there's detecting motion, and there's flying around the property, all of which, and again, just like the security system owner gets a voice alert and the security system owner can have a notification sent to their phone, I would probably just connect the protect home directly with the home, and then all of the ellipses under protect home also apply to the home, right? That way, otherwise you just end up with too many lines. Okay, so fly around property. That is interesting. I think this is the drone component of the home security system. I'm wondering whether... So again, with requirements, you want to try and not, and I probably should have put that up a bit so you can read it. I would try and not infer a solution, or at least say what, or rather how you're going to do it. So I'm not sure what the right way to express that function is. Crunch. Sorry, I just dropped my pen. Okay. To me, it's not. It's more than protect home, but it's something like protect inaccessible areas, or something like that. I don't know. Something like that. Sure, you can do that with a drone, and that's probably what you're going to end up doing. It's just when you're still at the project proposal level, you want to, like I said, avoid imposing a particular solution if you can. I don't, and I'm not sure about deploy sensors. I don't. The fly around the property may be more like deploy sensors, right? That's what the drone is doing. It's making using its sensors to fill in gaps on the home mounted sensors, the static sensors. I'm not sure whether deploy sensors is something that the Protect Home would do. I certainly think you may need to install sensors, right? And maybe that's what you meant by deploy. But I'd have to think about that. So again, maybe install, right? And then the other one is, there is no way I want a criminal controlling my home security, right? So I'm just going to try and remove that line, right? They certainly need the criminal there, but I think they're going to be the thing that's being detected, right? Okay. What does the home security team think of that? And I apologize for you being the first, but I'm going to critique everybody, so this is the order I chose.
We this was something that we worked on for a little while. We had like a couple drafts that we were sending back and forth with you, and it was kind of confusing, but what you said makes sense. It definitely helps us now understand it a little more. So I'm just wondering, will we be able to edit this and resubmit it?
Sure, and sure, that no problem with that at all. And feel free to it doesn't have to get in today. Take a little bit more time and get it a bit further along. And I fully understand, right? You probably haven't come across use case diagrams before. I'm the only way to actually figure out how use case diagrams work is by actually doing them. So I'm giving you the chance to do it on something that matters, right? Your project. So yeah, that's fine. Just I'm not sure whether I set it up. In fact, let me figure that out right now. I don't want that anymore. Let's go to assessment. And let me just make sure that it's still open. Closed it on me. No, it's got. Right, it's do then, I just make sure that I didn't set it up to close. No, I haven't set it up to close. So just submit it. If you submit it after tonight, it'll come in late, but I don't have any penalty for lateness unless I explicitly tell you. Okay? Okay, so next is the smart fridge, right? And I think this needs quite a bit more work, and there's a few things that everybody does the same, or a lot of people do the same thing when they first come across use cases, use case diagrams. Use case diagrams by themselves have no sequencing associated with them, right? So this is obviously a sequence of things, and the piece of use cases that I didn't tell you about, and I deliberately didn't tell you about because if I told you about them, then we'd have to go down a whole software engineering requirements elicitation rabbit hole that is not what this course is about, right? So I sort of apologize, but sort of not telling you about a use case. I'll briefly tell you what a use case report is, right? For every ellipse in the use case diagram, there is a use case report, a written summary of things in that use case, and the main things in a use case report. In fact, let me just make some more room. Right, the main things in a use case report, and it's a written thing, are the preconditions, or sometimes it's called the triggers, right? And that tells you when can or when does this use case happen. Sometimes it never happens, right? So what causes this use case to happen, or what conditions need to be met before this use case happens. And there's a few others. I'm not going to go through all the detail, but the key thing is what's called the happy flow. Sometimes it's called the basic flow. And the happy flow, or the basic flow, is a sequence of steps that the use case takes. So on this, where are we? On this diagram, this is looking like the happy flow for a, I don't know, what would the use case associated with it be? It might be track new fridge deposit, is that the right word? Track fridge contents, maybe, if we're not, track fridge contents, right? So that's a sequence of steps that the particular use case does. There's also things called alternate flows, and they're things that are either other things that, alternate flows are sort of normal operations, but not doing things the way the happy flow tells you. Maybe there's some optional things in the happy flow, and the optional things are what's in the alternate flow. The thing with that from a software viewpoint, though, that people just don't don't get is the next piece of a use case report that is really useful are the exceptional flows. Right? The happy flow, as the name suggests, is what happens when everything goes right. Okay, it's the happy flow. It's what you want your software to do, or your system to do, if it involves hardware as well. The exceptional flows go through every step of the happy flow and every step of each alternate flow and say, if this goes wrong at this step, what do I do? Right? So if there are 10 steps in the happy flow, there should be at least 10 steps in the exceptional flow describing what goes wrong at each step and what the response to things going wrong at each step are. Right? So these are the error conditions. And the aim is to figure out what those error conditions are before you write any code, or before you buy any material, or before you make any hardware. Right? The aim is to think around the problem. And then the last piece are the post conditions. Right? What's true at the end of the use case? Has the maybe one for the home security system, right? The authorities have been notified, right? Or for the fridge automation, the latest picture of the fridge contents has been taken. Right, so there's a again, I haven't told you about this. You don't need to know about this. I thought it might be interesting just because of the way this use case diagram was done. Okay. So the other thing I apologize for picking on you. I'm hoping everybody in the class is learning. So I think giving feedback this way is useful. The aim is for you to learn, and I'm hoping that's what this is a good way to do that. So the other thing I would say is words that I find as a project manager or as a software engineer disconcerting. As the one word in particular is the word user, because it doesn't tell me anything about why the person is using the system, right? So I think the fact that you've drawn two different stick figures and labeled them both users tells me that there are actually two different roles happening here. Right, and those two different roles should have two different names. I'll just mention the other. I don't think it's on this one. The other word that I find isn't very helpful, just because it's so generic, is the word manage. Right, user is one word, and manage is the other. Because manage can do lots of stuff, and it's not very expressive. Okay, so let me think about what I would call each of these. I'm assuming, and please fridge people correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming this user is the one who's putting something in the fridge, right?
You'd be correct.
Yeah, so I would call this person, and I'm making this up as I go along, replenisher, right? Or shopper, if they've been to the shops and they're putting stuff in the fridge, or maybe just grocer. I don't know whether that's not quite the right word, right? But use a more expressive word for what that role is actually doing, right? So what are they actually achieving in terms of using the smart fridge? And then again, it could be that the stick figures here are roles. They're not people. The same person could take on both roles, right? But the roles do different things, and they constrain what that role does to the system. And I'm wondering what the I'm wondering now about my names over here, because I think the and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking that the reason this person, as well, it says it there, right? The reason this role wants to look at what's in the fridge is because they're out shopping, right? So maybe I got these names wrong. So maybe this is the shopper, and I don't know what you would call this. Maybe replenisher is still okay, but something a bit more prosaic, perhaps. Maybe fridge loader, right? Because they're happening in two very different contexts. One of them, you've been out shopping, you've got the stuff, or you're at home and you're taking stuff out of the fridge, right? So that's a good point. Taking stuff out. So one would be a fridge loader and the other would be a fridge raider, right? I don't know. Like I said, I'm trying to make this up as I go along, so I am not necessarily getting the right words. So let's think about what the use case is that's described up here, right? I think the actual use case is something like capture fridge contents. And you might have a better way of expressing that. The aim is not for me to impose my vocabulary. My background is I'm originally Australian, and so all of my spelling is British or Australian spelling. So I have a hard time with a lot of American spelling. I'm mostly over at this stage. I've been here. How long have I been here? I've been here 17 years this year, so that's a while. So I'm mostly over it, but I still get caught up. The main one that I get caught up with is this letter. Right, I nearly always want to call it Z. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, we have the ABC song in Australia as well, but it's not Z at the end, because it doesn't. But it's Z, but it doesn't rhyme, right? Whereas the Z rhymes, so it's a bit funny. The thing about that capture fridge contents is it helps the fridge loader or the fridge raider. It does something when they open the fridge, right? It doesn't help the shopper, right? So I think the shopper might have another use case, which is just view fridge contents. right? So you would have that user or that role and that role, and then this would be inside the... Okay? And like I said in my aside about use case reports, what you have here, and I teach software engineering at Fairfield University, and same thing there. The students find it hard to break away from the sequential way of thinking about what you have to do to do this. So they do exactly the same thing you've done, right? The sequence of ellipses, but in use case diagrams, there's no real sequencing of the use cases. They will sometimes be done in different order, right? In the case of the two I've just identified, capture and view, you can't view something until it's been captured, right? So in the use case report associated with the view fridge contents, you'd probably have a precondition that the fridge contents have been captured, right? Or maybe you've got a way to view the contents or to capture the contents on view, right? When you ask for a view, maybe you can get a live feed of the fridge. I don't know. That might be something. Okay, fridge people, any thoughts about what I've just said?
Yeah, definitely gonna resubmit.
That's okay. Part of the reason for doing this is so we can think about the problem, and before we sort of jump in and do more stuff than maybe we should before thinking about it. So anyway, it's a way of thinking.
From what I've taken away is that each ellipse is a event, and it doesn't have to be in sequential order.
Well, event again, it's usually a function, so it has a verb, capture or view, and then the sequencing would, like I said, usually happen behind the scenes in the use case report. I'm not asking anybody to write a use case report. I wouldn't go that far, but the aim is to just try and get the use case diagrams. I actually find usually the use case diagrams more useful than the reports. Sometimes the reports are good, particularly the exceptional flows, thinking about what happens when things go wrong, or what you do about it. Yeah, I think I'd rather, for this class, I'd rather just go with the use case diagram. Okay. So here's the parking one, and I don't know. Like I said, I don't know whether I have the most up to date of this one. I got it last night, I think. So you may have updated.
Yeah, I made one just adding like the stick figures and the ellipses, but that's.
Oh, have you? Is that? Did you submit? Did you submit that, or do you have it? Can you share?
Yeah, I submitted it, I believe.
Okay, let me grab that. Sorry, I.
It's basically the same thing. It just has more stuff. It's the same information.
Okay, that's Hey, smiley faces. And where is my... There it is. So let me just insert the real one over here. Okay, so now why isn't... There we go. I just want to make it a bit bigger. There we go. Okay, so we have the driver, we have the parking space sensor, and we have the parking application. So certainly the driver, that's a good good actor. I'm wondering why the parking space sensor is separate from the system. Are you intending to integrate with somebody else's parking space sensor, or I would have thought that the sensors for your system are part of your system. Right?
Yeah, I just put them there because they were, one of the most important functions.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I put them as actors because they did a lot more than just a singular function.
Right, and again, having the sensor and the application, it's more of it's more of an architectural thing than a use case thing, right? The certainly when we talk about the deployment diagram, you're going to need to put sensors and the software application and other stuff on that deployment diagram. So you certainly need to think about those things. I'm just not sure that they should exist on a use case diagram. Okay, and then let's have a look at the functions. Display parking space availability. That is exactly right. That's the prime aim of what you're trying to do. I'm not sure about. I think these two. Let me use a different color. I think these two, occupied space and vacant space, along with your parking space sensor, probably are just a single function, which is detect parking occupancy or something like that. And I didn't leave enough room. Oh well. Right, detect parking occupancy, I think might be the thing that you're doing with the occupied versus the vacant space. And then provide data on occupied or vacant parking space. Yeah, that sounds like a good use case. That's certainly something that you want to be able to do. I'm thinking though that function is provided by the parking application, which is part of what your system is, right? That's one thing your system is going to have is an app that lets you show that information, right? Again, so I don't think it's a separate part of a part that's. I don't think it's a thing that's different from what you're trying to build. You're trying to build that parking application, right? I think you're it's part of the system that you want to put together. And then record personal vehicles parking space. That is so good. I wish I could do that all the time. I used to drive a yellow Volkswagen Beetle, and I went to one of the big malls near where I live, and I just wanted to run in quickly and get something, so I parked as close as I could, and it wasn't that close, but I parked as close as I could, and I didn't even think about where I parked the car, and it wasn't where normally if I go to that mall I park in a particular place, and it's a little way away from the the mall itself, but I know where it is, and I go back there. But this time I decided to try and get a lot closer and just run in and run out. Anyway, so I ran in, I ran out, and I got to the parking lot, and I realized I hadn't remembered where the car was. So I thought, oh, it's a yellow Beetle. I should be able to find it. I got to the third yellow Beetle, and the third one was mine.
Oh.
They were all the same make or the same model, the same color. And I'd never seen that many yellow Beetles in one place before, but it was the third one. So, yes, recording a vehicle's parking space is a good thing. Okay, so yeah, that's actually that. I have been critical of all three of these, but this one's not too bad. I think there still needs to be some updates, but yeah, I think this is pretty good. Just trying to think if there's anything else you would want to. Oh, that was what I was going to say. Provide data on occupied or vacant parking space. You may want to think about having another actor. I don't think these two, parking space sensor and parking application, are actors, but you may need another actor, which is the parking manager, or the person who manages the parking lot, right? Because they might be very interested in the numbers that your system will pick up, right? The parking lot manager is the person who's responsible for the revenue of the parking lot. So if they know that they can get numbers on how full or empty their parking lot is, that might help them figure out, when to offer, I don't know, in before 6 a.m. Cheap rates, or whatever it is, to a way to improve their business. So that's what I would add.
So
Okay.
that it provides like statistical data for them?
Yeah, exactly. I've just started working with someone who's very much on the business development side of things, and since just because there's so much analytical data available, they're really into some of the more technical stuff, and they're not a particularly technical person. They're more on the business side, but they do like getting the sorts of stats that you could think about coming out of this sort of a system. Any other comments from the parking lot people?
If we change the middle one to entry, access control, and available space sensor, it will be the work fine.
Yeah, I think so. Try it out. I'm happy to take. I think I've set these up for 3 submissions, so I'm happy to give feedback on. I've given you feedback on your first submission, and if you want, I can kick all of them out, and you've still all got 3 submissions to try it out. But I would take the feedback that I've given you, each team, and then try and rejig your use case diagrams. Okay. Okay. So next week, and it is only a draft, I want you to have a look at putting together a first draft, and it's going to be nowhere near complete. So don't worry about completeness. But what I want you to do, and I haven't added a template. I think I have a template for this. But what I want you to do is put together something like this. You already have the shall statements, right? You've already got a one sentence project description, you're gonna, I recommend don't write the summary until you've finished everything else. The summary should concisely capture everything else in the document. So you're not going to be able to write it until you've finished everything else in the document. Statement of need, that may take a little bit more time. You've probably got some ideas about the numbers, but I want you to reference things that tell you, or tell me, why it's a good idea to do this project. We've already decided it's a good idea, it's going forward, but I want you to convince me even more that it's a good idea to go forward. I talked about shall statements. We've just gone through the use case diagram. I need to talk about deployment. So let me just quickly finish on what's in here, and then I'll have a quick discussion about deployment. We might do a little bit more in class next week on the deployment diagrams. Okay, so team approach, you should be able to do that. You've seen each other's functional resumes, and you know roughly what sort of stuff you need to do. You want to talk about feasibility. That's the way the Coffee King project talked about feasibility. You need to have a rough idea of how much stuff costs. I would recommend, particularly for any computing devices that you intend to get at least 2. It's almost always the case, at least in the November-December time frame, that things get very hectic, and I've seen too many students blow up their single device in that time frame just before they get to present their work. It's another thing I suggest. It's probably a little way off yet, but as you start pulling together things that work, take a video as soon as they work and store the video. Maybe just upload it into YouTube, right? Having that as evidence that you've actually done something that worked, particularly when it all comes crashing down. I'm not saying it will, but I've seen maybe 20% of projects come crashing down right before the final presentation in December. So try and cut yourself a little slack and get a couple of sensors. Having said that, I already have, I need to go through and see exactly what I have. I already have some Raspberry Pis and Arduinos. So let me, in fact, let me just write down that I need to do that. This is CET497, and I need to inventory what I have of Raspberry Pis and Arduinos, at least. And I can let you have them sooner rather than later, and they don't have to go, well, you should still put them in this this budget, but I can let you have them without actually having to pay out any more money. We bought them last for the students last semester or last year. Schedule. I want the schedule to be done on a weekly basis, right? That's why you see week 1, week 2, week 3. It doesn't have to be down to the date level, but each week, each month should have 4 weeks. Okay, maybe there's a little bit more than 4 weeks in each month, but 4 weeks is fine, right? And show what you're intending to do, particularly because you know, right? You know that you have to do a preliminary design document and a preliminary design presentation at the end of semester. I think I've been reasonably clear with that. Right, so at the moment we're working towards the proposal and the proposal presentation, and then the two things you've got to present at the end of semester are the preliminary design document and then the associated presentation. Okay, that's these things here. Right, and then after that, that's in the fall. Okay, any questions so far? I want to have a quick chat about deployment diagrams and then we're done. All good? Okay. So my favorite drawing tool at the moment is lucid.app, and that's the one we excuse me, that's the one we did the board on, that one there. And the way I did that is with the Lucid Spark board. The way I've been doing the diagrams, it's a bit more structured, using a Lucid Spark document. Okay, so this is where we get shapes, and then there's more shapes down here, and the particular ones that I've been using most of are the UML diagrams, and there's lots of different UML diagrams. The use case ones are the stick figures, and then the other ones that I'm talking about today are the UML deployment diagrams. Okay, so a deployment diagram basically consists of, now there's two ways to do this. I'm just doing it the direct physical way, and that means I use node instances. You can think about this as a, if you might, like a Java class. This one here, the UML node, is the Java class, and there's only one of it. This one here is the node instance, and just like with Java classes, you can create more than one instance of a Java class. This is an instance of the node, and that's the thing that I'm usually most interested in. What is the physical makeup of the system? So this node, what is a node? A node is a computer, or sometimes a piece of network hardware, right? So we might call this right, maybe you're using a Raspberry Pi, and then maybe we also need a mobile phone, right? And I'm hoping nobody needs a server, but you might also think about having a server, right? Now you've got those two pieces. Now you have, again, component instance. This might be my embedded software, right? Whatever the software that you need to write to run on the Raspberry Pi. And then we might also have my app, right? Because you need to write an app to run on your mobile phone. Okay, other things that happen, well, you need to connect stuff up. And again, I tend to prefer not to right? There might be a connection here, and maybe this is over Wi-Fi. Okay, if it's over Cat5, you need to say that. Maybe you also want to do connections between your software. Oops. Right? Maybe your embedded software connects there, and maybe this is maybe it's over HTTPS. Maybe it's some other connection. Okay. Maybe you need a particular sensor, right? Maybe you've decided that you can use your phone, and but you need to make sure that you have access to a camera, right? So maybe you need a camera there. Maybe you need to install a camera on your Raspberry Pi. You can get a shield that lets you take pictures with the Raspberry Pi. Right? Maybe you need other sensors, right? The parking garage, right? Let's call this a parking space sensor. Right? And maybe within your embedded software, maybe it needs to talk to maybe the camera and the parking space sensor need to talk to my embedded software. Okay, the aim of the deployment diagram may be same over here, right? You want the camera to talk to the app. But the aim is to get all the I've always been trying to figure out what the right definition of architecture is. Does anybody have a guess at what the definition of architecture is? Michael Frederick, what do you think? What's the definition of architecture?
Like, I know what it is, but it's difficult to express it.
Right, and that's I agree. I just wonder whether let me try someone else. Eric, what do you think architecture is? You're on mute. No, you're not there. Okay, let me try Michael Gallagher. Any thoughts? What's architecture?
Architecture, I guess, would be the structure of. Do you mean like in respect to like software?
Anything, software, hardware, houses. What's architecture? Structure's a good word. So yeah.
I would say, I guess, the structure and layout in which something is built.
Yeah, that's not a bad definition. Let's see if somebody else has a different one. Fahim, do you have a thought about what architecture is?
That's the same like he said, and at the same time, that's mean the person who create or maintain the hardware, software.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll tell you what my definition is, and it's a bit vaguer. Structure is certainly important, right? My my take on what architecture is architecture is the important things to solve the problem, right? If I had a problem that I was trying to solve and I needed a mobile phone to solve it, not having a mobile phone on the architecture diagram means I can't solve the problem. If I need an app on the mobile phone to solve the problem, it's important to solve the problem, so it's got to be part of the architecture. If I need a camera, it's got to be part of the architecture. If I need a parking space sensor, occupancy sensor, it's got to be on the diagram, right? So for me, architecture is what is important to solve the problem. Okay, and it might be that some things that you think are important aren't, and maybe they don't end up being on the architecture diagram, on the deployment diagram. Okay, I think that's about it. The only other things that maybe they're the two important pieces, the node instance and the component instance. And this is mostly talking about software, except these boxes are hardware components, they're computers. You maybe, depending on your system, if you need a router of a particular sort, that would also be a node instance, right? Or any other piece of network, maybe a I don't know, Wi-Fi router or a cable modem, those sorts of things, depending on if it's okay to assume that the Wi-Fi network exists because your system is not providing the Wi-Fi network. However, if your system needs to do network level things, then you may need to add a network level device to show that it's needed in order to solve the problem. Okay, let me just any questions on any of that? Okay, have some of this in the slides is a little bit too highfalutin. Have a look at that example project proposal. In fact, let me add that. Let's just reset the size. Let me just add that to the assignment so that you can see it. That's the rubric. But let me add the example. Coffee King. And I'll see if I can find, I think I had a rubric for it. Sorry, not a rubric, a template, a Microsoft Word template for it, but I don't know where that is off the top of my head right now. So, but I'll hopefully over the weekend let me just write that down so that I don't forget. Add template. And remember, the thing is you're not going to be able to finish the project proposal by next week. But however, I want you to have started it and to have taken the things you've done already and put them in there. The shell statements, the updated use cases, the any background information. Okay, and then we can have another review. What I'll aim to do next session is take your drafts and go through each of them for each team and give you feedback on each of them, just like I did with the use case diagrams today. That way everybody learns something about what other people are doing. Okay? Any questions? If not, let's leave it there, and I will talk to you next week. Thank you very much for your time.
Have a good weekend, Professor.
Yeah, you too, Anthony. Bye-bye.
Professor, when you called on me, I was in the bathroom. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Out of all seriously, out of all times that I managed to pick.
That's okay. I expect things like that to happen, so don't worry about it.